Okay guys, today we continue our video and we're going to be talking about the mechanism of vision. What happens when you see and how do you see? Research has likened even the camera, your phone camera, your whatever camera, they are built to mimic the eyes, both their lens, both their everything. And in those days, you see that before you could, even till now, before you could print any picture you snapped, it is, we call the one you go watching the negative. The one you go to produce, we call it negative. And so it is even in the eyes visual processing, that the picture your eyes shows is taken in, but the one that your brain gets is the one that is interpreted via the blind spot. That is where the negative is given upside down and every other thing, right? That is by the way. So let's go into it. What we have today, the mechanism of visual perception. So yes, or mechanism of vision. So we understand that when we talk about light, right, the light from the solar system or any kind of light that helps vision, right, we're talking about the intensity and the frequency of that light, right? So the intensity and frequency, the intensity of the light determines the brightness of that light. Yes, that is it. That is it. So you understand that the light enters from the cornea across to the pupil. Yes, from the cornea to the pupil, right? Once that light enters from the cornea to the pupil, from the pupil it moves to the iris. The iris has a role to play because it regulates the amount of light coming into the eye. Yes. Then in that pupil there is what we call the lens found at the retina. There's a lens found at the retina. In fact, the retina contains this, what we call the retina as the lens, right? But in that lens, there is the eyes of the lens. That is where you find the sensory or the visual nerves. Yes, they are also called the photoreceptors. The visual nerves, or yes, the nerves for sight, is found at this retina. The retina is a lens and containing the sensory nerves for vision. They are the rods and the cones. The rods is spelled R-O-D-S and cones C-O-N-E-S. Yes. So these are the two. Whereas the cones, yes, the cones are fewer in number, but the rods are numerous in that retina. Yes, the cones are more concentrated at the center of the retina, while the rods are also seen at the retina, but there is a place in that retina we call the fovea. The fovea is where this whole capture and everything is done, but majorly the cone is concentrated at that point, whereas the rod is also numerous, like as we said, but it's not found mostly in that fovea of the retina. So that is for that, and so that fovea is at the center of that retina, as we talked about. So the retina has a nerve, or we call it a bundle of axon, a nerve or an axon that protrude from the retina back, or from that pupil or the eyes totally, that connect to the back of the brain. Yes, it is called a blind spot, because that information gotten from, or that is received by these receptor cells, like the rod and the cones, yes, is taken then and transferred electrically as electrical information to the straight to the that back of the part of the brain where the blind spot is located, right? This is the nerve, optic nerve, right? This optic nerve we find at that place. And remember, please, that transduction, that is this conversion of this sensory or visual stimulus to these electrical impulse that can be transferred via this axon to the optic nerve, or yes, the blind spot, is called it happens at the retina. Yes, very important. So after this transduction, like we said, it's sent away to the blind spot. Yes, from the optic nerve to the blind spot, and the blind spot will still take it via the optic nerve, like straight again up to the brain, and this is happening across or through the what we call the optic chiasm. You call it optic chiasm or optic chiasm. So chiasm, CHIASM, the optic chiasm. So that is where the information goes from that optic chiasm to the cerebral cortex. And we know that when we talk about cerebral cortex, we talk about the occipital lobe of the cerebral cortex. So additional information you may want to note is that the cones is responsible for daylight vision, while the rods are mainly used in low light vision, or should we say dark visions, right, during the night. So in summary, we understand that the mechanism of visual perception is that when the intensity of the light comes hitting the objects or wherever, the eyes goes and captures an information. When this stimulus hit the eyes, although this light, as we also explained, that the pupil brings in the light that is controlled by the iris. The iris then controls the light that gets to the retina, which is the lens, and now captured in that lens. That's the retina. You see the two receptor cells. That is the cells for sight. We call the rods and the cones. So in the rods and the cones, the rods is for dark visions, while the cones are for daylight vision, right? So, and we say that once this information once they transduce this stimulus from the environment, transition are taking place, this electrical impulse is now carried from that point via the optic nerve to the blind spots, right, which takes it, right, the connection continues to the optic chiasm. The optic chiasm relays it to the cerebrum. The cerebrum, for higher order processing, we call that is the occipital lobe, which interprets the information and say, okay, this is it. This is what we are seeing and everything. So this is the mechanism of vision, and we'll be glad to see you in the next video as we talk about the mechanism of auditory vision. Thank you.